I think it's time I address the elephant in the room. That's right. Is Fanatics destroying the hobby? So I'm going to make one big promise to you. If you watch this entire episode, I am going to show you everything that Fanatics is doing, the mistakes that they're making, and my recommendations for Fanatics to actually grow the hobby. That's right, 10x the hobby. Now, I'm deciding to take out all my normal stuff in this video so I can actually dedicate it to going over all of those things in each segment in this week's show. And if you stay to the very end, I have a very important question to ask you. So don't click away. Cue the intro.
EDI Sports Show every Friday, hot take, where's the market, behind the scenes from the car shows to the streets. There's only one show, there's only one show I wanna watch. EDI Sports Show every Friday. From interviews.
Welcome back to EDI Sports Show. We have a very important episode this week. Is Fanatics destroying the hobby, yes or no? That's what we're going to deep dive this week in this week's show. I'm taking out all of my segments. Basically, I'm going to dedicate all of them to this question. So if you stay to the very end, I promise you that you're going to know everything that Fanatics is doing, all the mistakes that they're making, and my recommendations to grow the hobby. That's right, 10x the hobby. And if you stay to the very end, please stay to the very end. I have a very, very important question to ask you. So don't click away. Let's get into the show. If you're new to this channel, hello, my name is Doc Schwartz, and I publish a weekly show here every week on YouTube. And there are normally 4 segments, but we're going to kind of do away with them this week so that we can get into, is Fanatics destroying the hobby? So where do we begin? What the heck is Fanatics doing? If you watch a lot of YouTube videos, and I do watch a lot of YouTube videos, then you have seen that there's a lot of sports card influencers on YouTube that cover Fanatics, but they don't do a full deep dive. They just cover what Fanatics does each and every day or every month. And so what I thought would be important to do is, at this point, now that Fanatics is in this game for 2 years, is why don't we put all the pieces together and actually take a look at the whole picture. So what is Fanatics actually doing? And so if you stay to the very end of this video, you're going to know what Fanatics is doing, the mistakes that they make, and my recommendations to Fanatics to grow the hobby. That's right, 10x the hobby. So let's start with what Fanatics is actually doing. So here's the hot take for this week. In order to grow the hobby, you need to know what you're doing. And Michael Rubin, who is the CEO of Fanatics, is a very smart guy, but he doesn't seem to know what he's doing. And so what I want to kind of explain first, before we get into all of the actual things that Fanatics did, is really explain that what Michael Rubin seems to be doing is changing this hobby from a collectible into a commodity. And I'm going to explain more about that in the second segment, Where's the Market, so that you understand what Michael Rubin's actually doing, which I think is going to absolutely destroy the sports card hobby, which has been around for more than 100 years. And Michael Rubin is just sort of either arrogant or ignorant. Who knows? But that's what you need to decide. So what's the first thing that Fanatics did? And here is the answer. They bought all the licenses for MLB, NFL, and NBA. But what you need to understand is those licenses don't actually come into effect until next year. So even though Fanatics is in the hobby space, they don't actually own the licenses yet outright until next year. So all the things that they've been doing so far have just sort of been experiments. And this is where things get really interesting, because I don't usually dive into my professional life on this channel, but I think it's important for you to know. Now, For those of you who have been following this channel for the last 2 years, then you know that I am an expert in education, and I wrote this book, Disrupting Education. And the reason I bring it up is because in chapter 6, there's actually a really important chapter, and it is called The Fundamentals of 21st Century Leadership Skills. Now, why is that important? Because this is what Fanatics is getting wrong. Fanatics doesn't have a vision for their business. They don't have a vision to 10x the hobby. What they have is a goal. The goal is to 10x the hobby, and that's fine. There's nothing wrong with goals. But goals and visions are different. They're not the same thing. And what I go over in my book is that the first fundamental of leadership skills in the 21st century is actually developing a vision. And the reason that a vision is more important than goals is because of what Fanatics is running into. So let me give you an example. Fanatics' goal is to 10x the hobby. The problem is you can't follow that. There's no path. So when they say 10x the hobby, that sounds great, but what does that mean? Or do you mean you want to 10x the number of people that are watching the hobby? Do you want to 10x the number of people that actually like cards? Do you want to 10x the number of people who buy cards? What are you actually talking about? Because 10xing the hobby is a goal. It's not a vision. So if you don't have a vision, us as collectors or new customers don't have something to follow. We don't know where you're going. What exactly are you talking about? What do you want to happen? And that's the problem that we have with Fanatics, is we don't know exactly what they want. Let's get into the other things that they've done so that we can kind of broaden out this entire picture. So the second thing that Fanatics did, because their licenses don't come into effect for several years, is they realized that they have never produced or manufactured sports cards before. They're a jersey company. That's what they do. They make jerseys and sell jerseys. The problem is that sports cards have nothing to do with jerseys. And so what Fanatics realized right from the beginning is, okay, we bought all these licenses, but how are we going to make all these cards? And so what Fanatics did was go out and buy Topps and Bowman, because they make cards and have been making cards since the 1950s. So with their acquisition of Topps and Bowman, they now had a manufacturer that could make their cards. But that doesn't mean that they knew how to run it. And that's where they're running into the next problem that they have. Now, that's not the only thing that Fanatics did. There's another thing that Fanatics did which you need to know about. So we already covered that they bought all the licenses for MLB, NFL, and NBA. Now they bought Topps and Bowman, and what's next on their agenda? So they acquired PWCC, which is an auction website. That is basically a marketplace to sell sports cards. So here we go. Licenses, manufacturing, and now an auction site. So that's what Fanatics has done, is built in this kind of company of 3 different companies, and somehow they're trying to bring this all together to 10x the hobby. Again, the problem being is that, well, what's the vision? Like, where are you going? So you want to make the cards and sell the cards, but that's not going to 10x the hobby. Like, that's just not going to 10x the hobby. You're basically saying you want to be the big fish in a very small pond, but you want to grow the pond into an ocean. I don't see how you're going to do that, because you haven't done anything to grow the hobby. In fact, you've made several key mistakes. So why don't we do this? Let's go to where's the market, and that's where I'm going to explain how Fanatics seems to be trying to shift this hobby from a collectible into a commodity, and then we'll go over the 3 mistakes that they've made. Let's get to where's the market. So here's the first mistake that Fanatics made. Now, when they bought all the licenses for MLB, NBA, and NFL, what they were saying to the hobby was, we are in charge.
There's a new sheriff in town.
Now, in the next segment, behind the scenes, I'm going to go over all my recommendations for Fanatics, so I want you to stay tuned for that. And remember, right after that segment, I have a very important question to ask you, so don't click away. But the first mistake that they made is when they bought all the licenses, they didn't know exactly what to do with them, because they have no experience. And one of the issues with that is that they're ruining the reputation of the companies they bought. Now, they bought Topps and Bowman, who have been manufacturing sports cards since the 1950s. And in their history, they have never produced unlicensed product. And yet, Topps just put out Topps Basketball Chrome once again before the license comes into effect. So why did they do that? And it seems to me that Michael Rubin and Fanatics is starting to get worried. They're worried that they can't actually increase the hobby by 10x. So they're rushing to get product out there in order to capitalize on hype. Instead of growing the business, they are doing the opposite. And one of the problems that I'm seeing with Fanatics is that they're not very customer-centric. Now, if you don't understand what that means, Amazon is a customer-centric business. Jeff Bezos basically drilled into his executives this mantra: what does the customer want? In comparison, it seems like Michael Rubin and his exec team do not care what the customer wants. It's more about, how can we make more money? How can we get more profit? And the problem is, again, like I go back to saying, there's no vision. Where are they going? What does Fanatics want to do with the hobby? You keep saying you want to 10x it, but all you keep doing is making mistakes and goofing off. So Topps Chrome now has an unlicensed product, which is now undermining the reputation of Topps. How are you going to 10x the hobby now? Those cards are not going to be worth anything, and now you've tainted the product. So what exactly are you doing, Fanatics? So here's the second mistake that Fanatics made. Now remember, I said that their licenses don't come into effect till next year, and they've never manufactured cards ever in their entire lives. Like, Michael Rubin knows nothing about card manufacturing and quality control and like print runs, and he doesn't know what he's doing. So he went out and acquired Topps and Bowman, who have a long history of producing cards. Now, that might have solved the problem, right?
Not so fast.
Running a sports card business is not as easy as it sounds, as Michael Rubin is quickly starting to realize. There are so many problems that he was not aware of that now he's face to face with, and he doesn't have a solution. And here's one of the issues, is that they are just printing cards all over the place, and there's no rhyme or reason to the cards. So if you're going to create a 10x hobby, people who actually buy the cards have to have a reason to buy them. And that's part of the issue, is there's no reason to buy them anymore. Fanatics is legitimately destroying the collectible space in order to make sports cards a commodity. Now, I talked about that in the first segment. So here's what I mean about sports cards being a collectible and sports cards being a commodity. When a sports card is a collectible, that means that's something that you actually want to own. And owning something for a purpose is different than buying something in order to sell it. And that's what a commodity is. If we look at the stock exchange or we look at the commodities exchange, That's what those things are. You don't buy a stock, like you don't buy Disney stock to basically love Disney stock. No, you buy Disney stock because you're going to make money at some point on that stock. You don't want to hold that stock and lose money. You want to hold it to sell it. That's the purpose. But that's not what sports cards are all about. Why would you buy a card to hold it, to sell it at a later date for less money, which is what typically 99% of cards do? If you buy a card today, a rookie, a hyped up rookie, and you hold on to it longer than a year or 2 years, more probably you're going to sell it at a lower amount than what you paid for it. And that's how the hobby works. In fact, that's kind of the whole problem that people have that try to get into the hobby who don't understand the hobby. That's why they lose money so quickly. Because if you buy all the rookies on the hyped up prices, you're going to lose money on the back end. And so there's strategies to actually making money in this hobby, and that's not one of them. Like the best way to make money in this hobby is to actually buy collections, bigger collections for a lower price point, and then you sell them off piece by piece. It's a business strategy where you buy distressed companies and then you sell off each division on its own, and therefore you make your profit back. It's the same strategy in sports cards. If you buy an entire collection that's worth $10,000 to $15,000 for $4,000, now you're going to make your money. And that's kind of the margin that you need to be at. So if a sports card collection is worth $15,000 that you're looking at, you cannot pay more than $5,000 for that collection. If you do, you're paying too much. And so that's the formula that you need to have, is that you can't buy a full collection for more than, again, 25%, 30% of what it is, because you're not going to make the money back because it takes so long to sell cards. And so you have to factor in time, not just price. And if the person doesn't like that offer, if their sports cards are worth $15,000 and you're only offering $5,000 and they're like, no, I don't want that, you can literally say to them, fine, then let's break up this collection into a smaller amount. You can sell what you want to sell individually and what's left. So you tell me, take out what you want to sell individually and what's left. And if they pare it down to a $5,000 lot, well, now you can only pay $1,000 or $1,500. In fact, that's what I just did with my own collection. Is I just sold a lot worth $5,000 for $1,500. Because that's what it's worth to the dealer. They have to make money on the back end. If I want to get the $5,000, then I have to put the time and the effort and all of the energy into selling it to get that $5,000 back. I don't know how long that would take, but that's the point, is that I would rather have the $1,500 in a short amount of time and let someone else deal with selling everything for the $5,000 instead of doing all the work myself. I value my time more than I value the cards. Again, these are not things that I want in my PC. These are things that I want to get rid of. And so one of the problems that we have in the hobby that Fanatics is not addressing, which I am going to make clear, Fanatics is not fixing anything wrong with the hobby. They're trying to do something else. They're just trying to do whatever is going on in their brain. Again, we don't know what their vision is. We have no idea what they're trying to do. All they've given us is a goal. We want to 10x the hobby. That's not a vision. We can't follow what they're doing because they don't know what they're doing. All right, let's get to the third mistake, which is that they have not figured out exactly what cards they want to print. Now, I know that might not make any sense, so let me give you some examples. Fanatics is a jersey company. That's what they do. They produce, manufacture, and sell jerseys. Now, as you could probably imagine, they have millions and millions of jerseys that have never sold. Maybe they made a jersey of a player that no longer plays for that team. Maybe they made a jersey for a player that doesn't even play in the league anymore. And so they have millions and millions of basically backstock of jerseys that they can't do anything with. It's just basically garbage. And so what Fanatics thought in their brain, again, either Michael Rubin is arrogant or he's ignorant. I don't know which one, but he basically decided last year that he was going to make cards where he cut out jerseys and stuck them into the card. And he called these cards relics. Now, I don't know about you, but what the heck are you talking about? Why do I want a card with a piece of a jersey from your warehouse that has nothing to do with anything? We're not talking about player worn, which is literally a scam if you want to know. Like, player worn means that in a room, they gave the jersey to the player, they put it on, they took a photo, and then they took it off, and then they cut it up. That's player worn. The other version of jerseys and cards is what's called game used, where the actual league verifies that this was a jersey used in a game during the season. Now, for me, that sounds much more exciting than a player worn jersey, because it's sort of like, oh, this is a jersey that was actually in a game. Now, you don't know what game, but who cares? Like, literally, it doesn't matter. There's only, there's 162 games in a baseball season, so it was in one of those games. And if Fanatics really wants to grow the hobby and get more jerseys, then they should have the players change their jerseys in the game. And therefore they get one jersey and the team keeps the other jersey. That's how you grow the jersey population. You got to have the players wear more jerseys. But that means you got to actually spend money on your jerseys, which we already went over. I did a video about how bad the jersey controversy is in Major League Baseball, how the quality sucks and how the lettering is no good. So clearly Fanatics doesn't seem to understand their own business, is that if your jerseys look horrible, then your jersey sales are going to go down. And if you have no jerseys to cut up into a sports card, well, then you just killed the sports card hobby as well. So you're killing two birds with one stone. Unfortunately, it's on the other end. So that's one more mistake that Fanatics has made. But let me get to number 4 on this list. So they have jacked up the prices of wax box cards. Now, I know I sound like an old man. Oh man, back in my day, the cards didn't cost this much. Now, I understand that I come across that way, but here's my point, and this is the big key. There are rules to retail that Fanatics is literally breaking at their own detriment. Now, I want to make this very clear. There are price points. There's a low price point, there's a mid price point, and there's a high price point. And if you don't follow these rules of retail, you are going to go out of business. If Michael Rubin came into Macy's and gave them his strategy, they would laugh him out of the room because he doesn't seem to understand price points. So let me go over the first problem with these price points. Is that if you want to grow the hobby, you have to have a price point that works for kids. And unfortunately, I don't know if Michael Rubin has children, and if he does, maybe he just spoils them beyond belief and he doesn't really care about money. But most parents aren't going to spend the kind of money that he wants them to spend. And 2, I would recommend to parents, don't waste your money. I don't know why any parent would spend $100 on a box of sports cards. And if you're a parent listening to this show, I'm telling you, do not do it. There are better ways to do this hobby for your kids, and will teach them things and also make it more enjoyable. Don't buy wax box. It is a complete waste of money. Now, we're going to get into the recommendations, and this is one of the pieces that I have a recommendation for in the behind the scenes segment, so don't click away. We're going to get to that right now. This entire week's episode is all about, is Fanatics destroying the hobby? And so I want to make sure that you know we're going through everything. So you've already know what Fanatics has done. Now you know the mistakes. In this segment, we're going to go over the recommendations that I have for Fanatics to grow the hobby 10x. Not what they're doing, which is I have no idea what they're doing. So if you're ready, we're going to get into it. But don't forget, at the end of this segment, I have a very important question to ask you, so don't click away. Let's first recap the 3 mistakes that Fanatics has made. So the first one is they're destroying the reputation of Topps and Bowman. The second is they're making fake cards with jerseys that they cut out from their warehouse. And the third is they jacked up the prices. All right, so now that we know the mistakes, the major mistakes that Fanatics is making, what are my recommendations? So let's get into the first recommendation. So Fanatics, Mr. Rubin, Bubba, you're not doing what you should be doing. So here you go. Here is my first recommendation. When you say 10x the hobby, what do you mean? Do you mean 10x the number of cards that you print? Do you mean 10x the number of people who watch the hobby? Do you mean 10x the number of people who purchase cards? Do you mean 10x the people who trade cards? What do you mean? You need to have a clear vision and a clear message so that people understand what's going on. You don't have a clear message. The problem with the sports card hobby was never marketing. It never was marketing. I don't know where you're coming from, but sports cards, if you're going to try to turn sports cards into a fad, which is what marketing does, if you pump up sports cards and you do a lot of advertising and you make sports cards a fad, then you're going to run into fad problems. The sports card hobby has been around for over 100 years because it's never been a fad. It's always been a collectible. It's a niche market. It's for kids that love sports, want to follow their favorite player and their favorite team. Like, it's not about fads. And so if you're doing that, basically you put the pedal to the metal and you're going to burn out the hobby, because that's what fads are. They kind of crash and burn. So Fanatics, if that's what you're going to do, you're going to run into that problem. So yeah, you're going to make maybe a lot of money in the short term, but you're basically going to ruin your business long term, which I don't see why you would want to do that unless you're a criminal, which maybe you are. I don't know. I mean, maybe you're trying to steal money from Wall Street, and this is the best way to do it. I mean, you wouldn't be the first person to defraud Wall Street, but you're not building a long-term sustainable business if you think the problem with the hobby not being big enough is marketing. So here's my recommendation. First of all, you need to understand price points, okay? So that's the first thing, price points. So here's what you got to understand. The first thing you need to do is you need to have an impulse price point. Impulse price point. Now, if you know anything about retail, what that means is when you go to the cash register, you see something, you go, ooh, that's interesting, and then you go and buy it. That's called an impulse buy. You don't think about the purchase, you just buy it on impulse. The problem is that the hobby doesn't have an impulse price point. They have mega packs, they have regular packs, they have blaster boxes. It's too confusing. It's all bad. They need one product at the impulse price point, and that is a blaster box. And the highest price they can charge for a blaster box needs to be $10. We're talking about the impulse purchase of what market? Who is Fanatics going after? They're going after the people who live on, Park Avenue in Manhattan, or are they going after the mom and pop that live in Main Street? Well, if we're talking about the Target and Walmart customer, then the price point for an impulse purchase is $10. Not $20, $10. That's the price point. That's the low-end price point. So you need a blaster box to be $10. Now, how many cards should be in a blaster box? Okay, so let's figure that out. The number of cards in a blaster box should be between 36 to 50 cards. That's a blaster box, 36 to 50 cards for $10, and you're going to sell out every single time. Now, how much does that cost to make? Well, that's the question is, do they have a problem with their print run? They need to make a price point that is an impulse purchase for the parent to say, oh, that's what you want? Here you go. $10 is not going to break the bank. $10 is also something that a parent's going to be like, all right, you get an allowance. Do you want the sports cards or do you want the cash? It's $10. It's not that big a deal. But when you get into price points of $15, $20, $24, $36, now a parent has to start going, yeah, I don't know. Do you really want to get into where parents decide whether they want to buy sports cards or not? You're not going to grow the hobby that way. You need a price point that literally when parents see it and the kid's like, I want that, and they look at it and go, well, how much is it? And the kid goes, it's only $10. The parent goes, all right, that's what you want. You want the parent to literally go, oh, okay, whatever. Just throw it into the rest of the pile. $10 is the impulse price point for the customer that Fanatics is looking at. Now, that's the first price point. So what's the second price point? All right, so we need to bump up. Okay, so now we go from the impulse blaster box to the retail box. Okay, so we have to move up the ladder. So how much should the retail box cost? And that means that price point is $20. Not 25, not 36, not 50. I mean, we're talking $20. Now, how many cards should be in a retail box? Well, if a blaster box is 36 to 50, then a retail box should be between 150 and 200 cards. Now, this is way less than back in the day. Back in the day, there were hundreds and hundreds of cards in a box, in a wax box. They had 36 packs, and each pack had 15 cards. That's hundreds and hundreds of cards. So we're not printing or we're not putting that many cards in a box anymore. Like I'm telling Fanatics, don't put that many cards. And I did an interview with, if you guys have been watching, I did an interview with Trike Sports way back several months ago, and he actually said, and he's the next generation, so I'm older than him, but he said to me, I don't want that many cards in a box. Like if there was 36 packs, 15 cards per pack, he's like, that's just too much. So you have to listen to the customer. Again, you have to be customer centric. So kids don't want hundreds and hundreds of cards. They want a certain amount. So a blaster box between 36 to 50 cards is reasonable. Again, charging $10 means that you're going to make a good profit on that. A retail box at 20 now, so that's double, and so you need to have between 150 and 200 cards in there. Okay, so those are the two price points. That means you have to get rid of the mega packs. That means you have to get rid of the other packs. That means you have to get rid of all the other mega boxes. Just get rid of them. You want to sell packs, then that's what the hobby shops should sell. So you should have differentiation in your distribution markets. So what does the hobby shop have? Well, they have, if you want to buy a pack, you have to go to the hobby shop. If you want to get a blaster box, you go to Walmart or Target. If you want a retail box, you go to Walmart or Target. If you want a hobby box, you got to go to the hobby shop. So now you have distribution channels and people know where they go. But your price points have to be relative to your distribution channel. That's the point. All right, so now that we've got the retail outlets out, so there's only two products going to Walmart and Target. That's it. You got blaster boxes that are at $10 and you got retail wax at $20. That's what goes to Walmart and Target. And they will sell out at those price points, again, because the price points are at the right level. They will sell out. Okay, now you go to hobbies. So what do you do with the hobby shops? So here is the first piece. Now, I'm going to break this up because this is the only thing that Fanatics needs to worry about, is what is the hobby box cost for the retailer, manufactured suggested retail price. That's what they have to figure out, because then they sell it on a wholesale price to the hobby shops. So the retail price for a hobby box should be $60. That's it. $60. Shouldn't be $100, shouldn't be $80, shouldn't be $200 or $300. This is the price point. Now, I'm going to get into why you fix these problems. You also fix on the back end. Well, I got another recommendation coming up where you understand like how you actually do this to make money on the Fanatics side, because they're a business. They got to make money doing this stuff. But you don't want to ruin the hobby in order to make money, because then basically you're ruining the golden goose. Like, do you really want to kill the golden goose just because you want to make profit? This is a sports card hobby that's been around for 100 years, more than 100 years. And so you're going to do short-sighted strategies in order to make profit right now? Again, that's called defrauding Wall Street, basically saying, oh, we're going to 10x the hobby, and then all of a sudden you just pump up sales, get all the Wall Street's money, steal their money, and then just blow up the hobby? Like, that's called fraud. So here you go, Michael Rubin. Either you're arrogant or you're ignorant and you don't know what you're talking about. So here's my next recommendation, all right? So special cards. Now, one of the things that's really cool about the industry and about the hobby is over the last 20 years, there have been special cards that have come into the hobby. Now, back in the 90s, they had something called the special insert, okay? So these were less printed cards. They were special inserts. And, in Donruss, they had Donruss Kings, and in other, in Fleer, they had their own insert, and Topps had their insert. All of these inserts are great. There's nothing wrong with them. Having shorter print runs for certain cards is a good idea. The problem is that when you try to combine two price points, okay? So here's the difference. There's base cards and insert cards, and then there's autos, patches, and numbered cards. So those two cards are not the same. And the problem is that when you put your numbered, patch, and auto cards into retail, you're combining two price points together and you can't make money. Not only that, you have to charge too much for retail. And I already told you the price points for retail. You cannot charge more than $10 for a blaster box, and you cannot charge more than $20 for a retail wax box. You cannot do that because the market's not going to go for it. If you want to sell out and you want to grow the hobby, again, not short-term gains. We're talking long-term, like 15, 20, 30 years of profit, then you have to build the hobby up. So this is what you need. You need parents to go, it's only $10 for a blaster box, not a problem. Here you go. That's $10 for a blaster box. You want stuff to just go off the shelf. Not only that, but Target and Walmart go, yes, we want this product because it brings the parents in. It's selling off the shelf. We want it because it brings the parents in. So it's a win-win for the retail outlet. It's a win for Fanatics because it's a lower price point. You're just selling wholesale. That's all you're doing. Again, when you're selling wholesale, it's just about moving the product. So you don't want the product back. The last thing that a retail outlet wants is to send product back to the manufacturer. That is the worst. If you can't sell out your product, you don't know what you're doing. And Fanatics doesn't know what it's doing because it's not selling out their product. They have to sell to other distribution channels because they can't sell out their product. That's a problem. They should have a retail product that literally just It's just a regular order every year. Walmart and Target just say, look, this is how much we want. Here you go. And Fanatics can print it, send it off, and then they sell out every year. If you do that, that's a great business. That's a leg of your revenue stream. It's a guarantee if you do this properly, which means that gives you sort of like the revenue base to then do other stuff. Now, here's where the hobby comes in. So the hobby box is $60. You don't have the other stuff in hobby boxes. Like so let's say you have like special stuff, or it's the reason you buy a hobby box is because it's a bigger box, which means you get more chances for the short prints. The short prints. And that's the point, is that you have to have the hobby box be ready for the short prints. So this is where the manufacturing problem comes in. So here's the recommendation. Fanatics, you need to stop printing 2 cards at the same time. You should do a retail print run, and then you should do a special print run. That's all of your jersey cards, your auto cards, your numbered cards, and that goes into another box that only goes to hobby shops. And the price point for that box, the special box, is $300 to $400. That's where you get the real money coming out. Now, how many cards should be in that box? Well, not that many. That should be a smaller type box. Maybe 24 to 36 cards in that box for $300 to $400. And it's only patches, autos, and numbered cards, which means you actually are now controlling the hobby. If somebody wants the patches, the autos, and the numbered cards, they go and buy the $300 to $400 box. That's what they do. And you're going to sell out of that product because now you're differentiating that product. You're saying this is the high-end stuff. This is the high-end stuff. So this is where you can actually decide, okay, well, how much of that do we want to print? And then when you distribute it in through the boxes, you're not worrying about the gambling and the sweepstakes and the odds that go into retail. You don't even need odds. There are no odds anymore in retail. You just take it right off the box. Basically, you're buying sports cards. So you buy a blaster box. There's no more odds on the box because there's no more specialty cards. There's no more gambling. There's no more sweepstakes. So you take out all the legal elements of it. You're just printing cards. And all you're doing is cutting up the cards and putting them in boxes. And then it just goes out to retail. It'll sell out. It will sell out because you're now differentiating the hobby. This is the retail part. This is the hobby part. This is the high-end part. Because you have to have segments. You have to have price points. People will get into the hobby at the price point that they want to get into. You can't have kids trying to get into the highest price point because it's just going to turn the parents off. I don't know what it is that you're doing, Michael Rubin, but you don't seem to understand people. You don't seem to understand money. Yes, you are a great marketer, but the problem with the hobby was never marketing. It was never marketing. That was never the problem. The problem was there was no cohesive vision for the hobby. Topps didn't know what they were doing. Fanatics doesn't know what they're doing. Panini doesn't know what they're doing. And Donruss, Fleer, Upper Deck, and Score are just following the herd. They don't know what they're doing. Folks, this is a hobby. It's a collectible. You need to value the collectible. If you don't have something you want to own, then you're not going to buy the cards because you can't make money buying a wax box and trying to sell the cards. You're going to lose money every single time. If you buy a retail box at $20 and then sell cards, you probably could make that back. If you buy a blaster box for $10, you could probably make that back. or at least get close. And if you're only a couple bucks off, it's not that big a deal. If you paid $10 for a blaster box and you made $5, okay, well, then you have $5 worth of cards that you just have. It's not that big a deal. When you spend $100 on a box and you could only make back 20 and the rest of the cards are just commons, you literally feel like you've been ripped off, because that's the truth. You've been ripped off. So, all right, let's go to the next recommendation. Stop printing complete sets. All right. This was an invention of the junk wax era. I know that a lot of you were like, well, wait a minute. They never printed complete sets back in the day. No, they didn't print complete sets back in the day. If you wanted to get a complete set, you had to buy wax packs. So here's the problem with Fanatics, is they don't seem to understand what's working in the Pokemon space should also be the same strategy in the sports card space. The Pokemon strategy is collect them all. Well, there's no point to collecting them all in sports cards when you just print a complete set at the end. You have to take away the complete set. Otherwise, there's no point to buying cards. Take away the complete set and start promoting collect them all. Collect the whole set. That's what the sports card hobby needs. They need kids to collect the whole set. And if you make blaster boxes $10 and you get 36 to 50 cards, now kids can actually put together a set. And that's what you want. You want kids to have, so if the set is 600 cards, let's say the set's 600 cards, well, now they can buy 2, 3, 4, 5 blaster boxes. They have 500 cards, and now they can trade the doubles for cards that they don't have. That's how you build the hobby. You want kids to have their PC binder, and then you want them to have their trade binder. That's the Pokemon market. That's what they've done in Pokemon, is kids have their set binder, and then they have a trade binder. And they go to shows and they say, okay, this is my trade binder. What do you like? And then they trade for stuff that they don't have. We don't have that in the sports card market anymore because of the complete sets have destroyed the collectible. Get rid of complete sets. End of story. It shouldn't be that difficult. It's just a waste of money on your print side. First of all, it's adding more cards to the market, which just lowers the value of all the cards. But two, it ruins the collectible nature of sports cards. Collect them all. All right, we have come to the end of the segment, and I promised you, here is the very important question that I want to ask you. Here it is on the screen. What do you think is the worst thing Fanatics has done to the hobby? I want you to put all your answers in the comments below. And now let's get to your viewer comments. All right, it's now time to get to our viewer comments. And the first thing that I want to do is I put out this poll on the community tab. And the question is, are you concerned about the future of sports cards? And so we had 25 votes as of yesterday when I recorded this video, and most of you said no. And so we had 25 votes as of yesterday, and 56% of you said no. 44% said yes. So that's where we are. Please go to the poll on the community page and give your vote. Now, let's get to the first comment, which comes from Egyptian Hebrew, who said, you have the knowledge and experience in the sports card business than anyone on YouTube. Appreciate your show. I want to thank you again, Egyptian Hebrew. It is a pleasure to have you as a subscriber. All right, the next comment comes from Jim Sholey, 4277, and he says, other than Rose, Ichiro, and Pujols, because they are in, minus the PED guys, however you feel, what about Veda Pinson and Johnny Damon for the Hall of Fame? They both have 2,800 hits. Wonder if the Hall of Fame voters are from another era and just forgot about Veda. Thank you, Doc. P.S. Chris Sewell is a solid YouTuber for the recommendations. So here is the point, and I actually did look at both Veda Pinson and Johnny Damon, and so here's my take on Johnny Damon. Now, Johnny Damon, based on all of the other players that got in, probably should be voted in at some point. His stats are not really stellar, but he does have World Series victories. And, you know, again, in terms of the history of the game and where the Hall of Fame kind of goes, is that these guys that win championships actually eventually get into the Hall of Fame. Again, Johnny Damon's stats are not that impressive. He doesn't have 3,000 hits, and I guess we're lowering standards. So he has about 2,700 hits. He doesn't have a lot of homers. He has like 200 home runs. But again, he has World Series championship rings under his belt. So in that regard, yeah, he probably should be in the Hall of Fame. So hopefully that answers that question. And I want to thank everybody for joining me this week. We have done it, another episode. I want to say thank you for everybody. This is Doc saying have a great weekend.
There's only one show. There's only one show I wanna watch. EDI Sports Show every Friday. From interviews and car news to the sports behind the scenes, only one show covers the deeds. EDI Sports Show. There's only one show.